Becoming a resident of a courtyard full of emotions, facing the demons and monsters in the courtyard, others are all gentlemen seeking revenge, and he only wants to do it from morning till night. Keywords of the novel. Siheyuan. At the beginning, I was chased back by a wealthy woman without a pop-up window. Siheyuan. At the beginning, I was chased back by a wealthy woman. Complete text download. Siheyuan. At the beginning, I was chased back by a wealthy woman. Latest chapter reading. Chapter 1. Going Home. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1. Going Home. Last century, 1960s. 4 or 9 cities. Li Yi, who had just completed the restoration and acceptance procedures, put the grain and non-staple food notebooks in his arms and walked out the door with Director Wang of the street office. People who come and go on business can't help but take a few more glances at him. Nowadays, no one's family is wealthy, and it's normal to not have enough to eat. Seeing a tall and strong handsome young man suddenly makes me feel strange. Li Yi turned to look at Director Wang with a smile on his face and said, "Director Wang, please be busy first. I just came back, so I'll go home and see you later." Director Wang, who is in his 50s and has short hair, looked at Li Yi with a smile and nodded, "Don't worry, let's get busy with you first. My daughter-in-law has just given birth these days, and I'm also quite busy. Come over for a drink when the moon is full." Looking at the tall and handsome Li Yi in front of him, Director Wang also had the intention of making friends. After all, it is rare for 22-year-old officials to switch careers in this alley. After hearing Director Wang's words, Li Yi nodded calmly. Farewell to Director Wang. Li Yi lit a cigarette and looked up to spit out a cigarette ring. The sky is as gloomy as the day I left as a soldier. He was originally an ordinary designer, but when he woke up, he unexpectedly traveled to the TV series, Love in a Courtyard, and became a high school student. The beginning can be described as unbearable. Li Yi traveled through the previous year when his father worked at a steel rolling mill. Due to a production accident, he became paralyzed, and his mother's poor health prevented her from going to the workshop for work. She could only earn a basic salary of 25.5 yuan in the logistics unit. The family is so poor that they not only have to pay for their father's medical expenses, but also have to raise him as a half-year-old boy. Without a golden finger, he turns green from hunger every day, wishing to find a rope and die once. I was so hungry that I couldn't bear it anymore. I used the sketches I learned in my past life to help people draw and earn some money to do some small business. Unexpectedly, I was reported and almost went to prison. Being ruthless, in order to avoid being troubled by those people, I took my graduation certificate in advance and ran to join the military. At the very least, I can't go hungry in the military, and having fewer people to eat at home is also a good thing. Unexpectedly, I just arrived at the military check.in system. With the gene improvement drugs sent by the system, Li Yi also made a name for himself in the army and worked for 6 years until he reached the company level. Unfortunately, the good times didn't last long. Li Ye's army was reorganized, and the leader he followed retired. His confidant had to switch jobs early. Today, as soon as he got off the train and didn't even return home, he took care of the matter first. After smoking, Li Yi threw the cigarette butt on the ground and stomped it out. He wrapped himself in his coat and strode towards home. Walking to the doorstep, Li Yi didn't have much emotion either. He didn't stay in this courtyard for long, only for about 3 months. Before he left as a soldier, he even tidied up some people in the yard. When he comes back this time, if the courtyard wants to calm down, he needs to ask Li Yi if he agrees. Before entering the door, Li Yi saw a man humming a song and shaking his head as he rode his bicycle to the door. Seeing Li Yi at the entrance of the station, he immediately smiled and shouted like a chrysanthemum, "Hey, Xiaoya, how did you come back? Visiting relatives." Li Yi looked, "Isn't this the protagonist of the TV drama, He Yuzhu?" With a smile, he nodded and said, "Hi, I've changed jobs. Didn't I just arrive at the door? Brother Zhu, it's time for work now. Hearing Li Yi call him Zhuge, He Yuzhu's face furrowed even more with a smile. The big and small ones in the courtyard are all called silly pillars when they see him, only Li Yi calls him pillar brother. If Li Yi is a high school student, it means being polite and dignified. Thinking of this, He Yuzhu smiled and said, that's perfect. Come to my house later, I'll stir-fry 2 dishes and have a drink. After finishing speaking, he glanced around with a sly expression, only to see that no one around could take out half a bottle of wine from his big cotton jacket. Shaking his head, he continued, see, Mao Tai, what's left of the small stove in the factory at noon. You have some good taste, kid. Li Yi couldn't help but laugh as he looked at He Yuzhu, who loved him as well as in TV dramas. Although He Yuzhu has many problems, such as a bad mouth and a tendency to argue, his heart is not bad. During the difficult times of Li Ye's family, He Yuzhu occasionally brought some leftover food from the factory back to help their family. At that time, everyone was hungry, and just a little leftover food could be considered a great help. Li Yi has always been empathetic about this, thinking about avoiding the fate of He Yuzhu being vampired for a lifetime and almost going bankrupt. However, things are unpredictable and he didn't stay long before joining the army. It's not too late to come back this time and we can still save some time. Thinking of this, Li Yi took out a bag of peonies from his pocket and handed one to He Yuzhu, saying, alright, brother Zhu, why don't you stir-fry a few vegetables? I have some good things here. I'll take them over and show them to you later. He Yuzhu looked at the peony and smiled as he took it over. He lowered his head and lit a cigarette while Li Yi handed over the fireworks. After spitting out a cigarette ring, he looked at Li Yi in confusion. What good thing is it? Don't worry, you'll know soon. By the way, brother Zhu, are you married? Hi, stop talking. The two of them smoked a cigarette at the door, chatted a few words, and then walked in together. As he walked to the courtyard, Li Yi waved his hand towards He Yuzhu and said, see you later, brother Zhu. As he spoke, he walked towards the backyard. This courtyard is a 3-in courtyard, with He Yuzhu, Qinhuai and Yi Zhonghai in the middle courtyard, Li Yi and Su Damao, and Liu Hai Zhong living in the backyard. As soon as he entered the moonlit door, Li Yi saw a plump young woman pouting her buttocks and pouring carbon residue. Li Yi looked around, especially when he saw the door of the room in the bangs tightly closed and couldn't sense any movement in the other rooms before tiptoeing past. Pop. It was patted on the head of the young woman. The young woman was suddenly slapped and stood up in shock, turning her head. I saw that the young woman was about 25.6 years old, with a charming appearance and rare fair and rosy skin in this era. It is Liu Xiaoyi in the TV drama. Liu Xiaoyi turned her head and saw that it was Li Yi who had hit her. The anger on her face disappeared in an instant. She was pleasantly surprised and asked, little Yi, how did you come back? She then said coquettishly, you're such a little Yi, you dare to hit my head. Li Yi looked at the other person with a smile and said, just returned from my job, sister Xiaoyi, she has gained weight again. He smiled mischievously and raised his hand. Liu Xiaoyi saw Li Yi flirting with him and gave him a bad look. She chased after Li Yi and wanted to give him a hand. Li Yi stood still in place. Liu Xiaoyi has a good temper and personality, and playing around is not a big deal. She has always regarded Li Yi as a younger brother and won't get angry because of this. The pleasant smell on Liu Xiaoyi's body made Li Yi feel hot in her heart. He just knows his own virtues, and Liu Xiaoyi is also good to him. He can't fool around. During those years, the young lady asked him for help with anything she had nothing to do, and after finishing, she gave him something to eat and drink, which was almost 80 cents. In fact, it was to take care of his self-esteem and indirectly help him. Xiaoyi, I'll go home and tidy up the house first. Cheng, you go ahead. I'll help you after I finish cleaning up the carbon residue. End of this chapter. Chapter 2. Qinhuai Ru has a strategy. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2. Qinhuai Ru has a strategy. After bidding farewell to Liu Xiao, Li Yi turned his head and returned to his own home. Li Ye's house has 3 rooms, with a living room in the middle. As soon as you enter, your left hand is the stove, and next to it are a rice jar, a wash basin, and other items. Across from it is a table of 8 immortals and several broken chairs. On the left is Li Ye's room. As soon as he entered, he felt the cold air blowing in. Upon closer inspection, several pieces of window glass on the Kong had already broken, and Li Yi saw a broken cabinet in the room. Turn your heart and silently recite to open up the system space. Li Ye's consciousness appeared in a closed space, which was filled with miscellaneous materials. From small tools of various models, military canned goods from various countries, individual rations, equipment other than weapons, to a wide range of transportation tools. This is the golden finger that Li Yi just obtained when he arrived at the army, the Professional Assistance Check-in system. Weekly check.in allows you to obtain various materials, skills, and more for your profession, but the items you receive are all from before the 1980s. Since Li Yi was discharged from the military, this system has stopped serving and was informed that the upgrade is in progress, and the completion time of the upgrade is unknown. After taking out the tools from the system space, Li Yi dismantled the cabinet and nailed several wooden boards to the leaking areas. Next, fetch water, boil the Kong, clean up furniture that cannot be used at home, and so on. Arriving at his parents' room and looking at the woman hanging on the wall, Li Yi sighed and offered incense. Although the time spent together was short, Li Yi always remembers that this woman would rather eat some ice lumps in the middle of the night to satisfy her hunger and also want him to eat more. It was also this woman who made Li Yi, who had come to an unfamiliar era, feel a hint of warmth. Although she gave half of her monthly allowance to her family, the long years of hard work still allowed this woman to go with her father after his death. And when they passed away, they happened to catch up with. At that time, the entire military district was on standby and they couldn't make it back on their own. After tidying up, Li Yi wiped his face and looked at his home, which could be said to be deserted. He made up his mind to decorate the house when work was arranged. He brewed himself a cup of coffee, and Li Yi raised his wrist to check the time, estimating that He had almost finished his meal. Just took out a few cans of canned food from the system, found 2 bowls, opened the cans and poured them in, and then put the cans into the space. Carrying a bowl and leaving the door, he walked towards Heyuju's house. As soon as he entered the courtyard, Li Yi saw Heyuju standing in the yard talking to a young woman. Li Yi looked and said, "Hey, isn't this Qinhuai Ru, the enemy whose ancestral tomb was dug by Heyuju? If they didn't have such a big grudge, Qinhuai Ru wouldn't have married him with 3 children and an old man. Not only did he suck his blood, but he also watched as Heyuju went bankrupt." The 2 of them stopped talking when they saw Li Yi holding 2 large bowls, and as he approached, they looked over together. "I saw 2 large bowls filled with meat, one was sausage, and the other was lean and fat pork chunks." After seeing it, both of them couldn't help but swallow their saliva. After only a few years, the impact had not been completely eliminated. Although it was not enough to starve to death in the 49 cities, ordinary people could only see oil and water once a month, and they suddenly saw so many naked eyes shining brightly. Heyuju is okay, after all, it's the chef who occasionally sees some meat and fish. Qinhuai Ru couldn't do it anymore, her eyes fixed on the bowl in Li Ye's hand. Li Yi, on the other hand, looked at the courtyard flower in the courtyard. Compared to the charming beauty that Li Yi had seen while traveling, now Qinhuai Ru can only be said to still be charming. Wearing a bulky cotton jacket, I couldn't tell my figure. My hair was dry and fluffy, possibly because I worked in the workshop all year round, and my skin was not as fair and tender as Liu Xiao's. I can only say that my facial features are good, especially those eyes. When I looked up at Li Yi, they were really charming and moving. Heyuju glanced at Li Yi and reached out to take the bowl. He picked up a piece and tasted it, saying, "Oh my, how could this meat be made like this? It's a waste, isn't it? Wait, I'll process it for you." After finishing speaking, he walked back to his own room with 2 bowls in hand. And Li Yi looked at Qinhuai and nodded calmly, as if saying hello. Qinhuai stood still, hesitating to speak. She had the intention of asking Li Yi for some meat, but when she thought about Jia Dongxiu's family and Li Ye's past, she couldn't open her mouth. When Jia Dongxiu was still alive before, he couldn't bear to see Li Yi because he was good-looking and particularly good at studying, which made Jia Dongxiu a little jealous. After Li Ye's father became paralyzed, they looked at their orphans and widows and bullied Li Yi without any trouble. And Qinhuai, as the daughter-in-law of the Jia family, also spoke a lot of cold words. Before Li Yi left, he also fiercely retaliated against Jia Dongxiu. He first wrote a report letter to the factory, reporting that Jia Dongxiu had almost lost his job while gambling. The day before joining the army, he took advantage of Jia Dongxiu's midnight to go to the restroom and blocked the restroom, putting on a sack and beating him. The 2 families have completely formed a bond. At this moment, Qinhuai had no face to speak, hesitated for a moment, and her eyes turned. I thought to myself, if I pretend to have something to do and bring a meme over later, why don't they give the child a bite of meat? With this in mind, Qinhuai smiled and said, "Yi, why did you come back? Has the house been tidied up? Is there anything I can do for my sister-in-law?" Li Yi, who was just about to turn around and leave, almost laughed angrily when he heard Qinhuai's words. "Who is your sister-in-law? Jia Dongxiu died early. If he didn't die, I'll see if I can call him my dad when I come back this time." Li Yi was too lazy to say much to a woman and said calmly, "I just came back. I have something else to do, so I'll leave first." After speaking, he walked towards Heyuju's house. And Qinhuai, who was standing still, twisted her body and walked away. Upon returning home, Jia Zhang saw Qinhuai Ju entering and asked, "How are you doing? Have you borrowed money from silly Zhu?" "No." Just as I was about to speak, Li Yi came over and didn't have a chance to say anything, Qinhuai said, taking off her cotton jacket. "Li Yi. Has the bereaved star returned?" Jia Zhang asked in surprise, shaking her chubby face. "Well, I went to Heyuju's house for dinner with 2 bowls full of meat. Mom, you put on Bang Gung's clothes, and I'll take him over to have some later." "Meat." Jia Zhang heard the word meat but didn't even hear the rest. "Can you bring some back for me too? Do you hear me? Also, you can't go over later and do anything to apologize to us, don't you?" "Mom, what are you talking about? Is Li Yi a high school student or a promoted cadre? The street office has sent good news to his family several times. Can you take notice of me, who has given birth?" "Humph. He doesn't like it. I'm afraid you're interested in him. You really have some ideas, why can't you get along with him?" He glanced at Qinhuai, who was lowering her head to dress Bangeng. Qinhuai pursed her lips and remained silent. Since Jia Dongxiu's death, she has been a widow, serving her mother-in-law every day and raising her 3 children. However, even so, she has not received a good word from Jia Zhang. She knew that Jia Zhang had some money in her hands, but apart from her son Bang Ji being able to spend a little, the 2 daughters could only watch eagerly. And in order to gather some food from various sources, I have tried my best. Jia Zhang has always watched coldly, eating the things she brought back with peace of mind. End of this chapter. Chapter 3. Inquiry. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3. Inquiry. Li Yi entered Heyuju's room, took off his coat and hung it on the hanger. He turned his head to see Heyuju walking over with 2 plates. Putting the dishes on the table, Heyuju smiled and said, "Come, little leaf, try my brother's craft." Li Yi sat down with a big knife and saw 4 dishes on the table. A plate of peanuts, a plate of shredded pork and radish in meat and oil. The canned pork brought by Li Yi was processed into spicy fried pork and cabbage, and the sausages were served with some seasoning. "Try it, I've processed your pork and spicy stir-fried cabbage," He Yuzhu said as he took off his apron and put it aside. "Don't worry, brother Zhua. Why don't we just eat all these dishes together? Why don't you just call an old man over together? That's okay, after all, when you're not around, it's an old man who helps your parents take care of the aftermath." With that, He Yuzhu got up, got dressed, and went out. The reason why He Yuzhu was called Yi Zhonghai was mainly because Li Yi asked him something. For Yi Zhonghai, Li Ye's feelings are very complex. Although in the TV series, Yi Zhonghai is particularly fond of morally kidnapping others and is often portrayed as a hypocrite. But that, after all, is from the perspective of an observer. When you are in this era, you will find that people are really quite complex. Just say that Li Yi was reported for doing business while traveling there and almost caught, it was Yi Zhonghai who helped to smooth it out. Later, Li Yi was able to successfully obtain his graduation certificate and become a soldier, which was also a relationship that Yi Zhonghai helped find. Even when Li Ye's parents left, he helped to take care of them, and Yi Zhonghai wrote a letter to Li Yi informing his parents of the news, so he mentioned something to handle. Li Yi sent him back 20 yuan, and Yi Zhonghai returned it. Whether Yi Zhonghai is trying to maintain his image in the courtyard or for other purposes, his help to Li Yi is tangible. This also made Li Yi make up his mind that besides not discussing the matter of providing elderly care for Yi Zhonghai, he could help with anything else. As for why, firstly, the love affair didn't reach that point, and secondly, who has nothing to do but find a father for themselves. Just as Li Yi was pondering, Yi Zhonghai and He Yuzhu entered one after another. Li Yi saw Yi Zhonghai stand up and say with a smile, "Grandpa, here you are. Good kid, don't say a word when you come back." Yi Zhonghai nodded with a smile and pointed to Li Yi. "I just came back this afternoon and was originally planning to visit you tomorrow. Today, I borrowed flowers to offer to Buddha and basked in the light of Brother Zhu. When I finish my work and come to my house, I will treat you both to a banquet." "Hi, why are you being so polite? I'll go to an old man's house another day to pick you up. I'll treat you, after all, you've helped me a lot. It's all small things." I said, "You two are chattering on, the food is really tasteless." He Yuzhu listened to their polite teasing. Eating. Upon hearing what He Yuzhu said, the two of them stopped talking and sat down at the dinner table together. He Yuzhu didn't grab his half bottle of Maotai, but took out 2 bottles of Fengjiu. Li Ye's eyes lit up at the sight. He was from SX before traveling, and he drank Fengjiu from childhood to adulthood. Seeing this wine, it was exceptionally friendly. The 3 of them clinked a cup, and Li Yi tasted the dishes, which were quite delicious. Except for peanuts, the other 3 dishes were all spicy and just right. After drinking 3 cups of wine, Li Yi was chased by them and asked about the war. Li Yi said a few things he could say, and the atmosphere became even more lively. Li Yi, seeing the atmosphere rise, toasted Yi Zhonghai and asked, "Grandpa, do you have any retired deputy cadres in the factory?" Yi Zhonghai took a sip of his wine and asked in surprise, "Have you been assigned to the factory?" Li Yi nodded and asked Director Wang of the street office about his allocation intention today. After all, he has 2 second-class merits, so he definitely needs to consult his own opinion on the allocation issue. In fact, Li Yi had already considered this matter, and neither the street office nor the authority department Li Yi considered it. After all, the wind is about to rise. The most comfortable unit is still the Red Star steel rolling plant, which needs to ensure production plans even in turbulent times. It is most suitable for people like him who want to survive and wait for the wind to stop. And Yi Zhonghai worked in the factory for most of his life, with a lot of disciples and grandchildren. He couldn't hide anything from him inside the factory. Since he is preparing to go to the factory, he must ask if there is a suitable location for him. It is definitely right to inquire with Yi Zhonghai. Li Yi nodded and clinked a glass with Yi Zhonghai. The street office asked me about my allocation intention, and I want to go back to the factory. Upon hearing Li Ye's words, He Yuzhu became happy first. Li Yi had a good relationship with himself, and he was still a cadre when he entered the factory. He could also take care of each other when there was anything. After thinking for a moment, Yi Zhonghai said, I heard that both the logistics department and the security department will have retired officials next year, so I'm not very clear about the rest. Li Yi nodded and remained silent. However, the heads of these two departments are both Li Fugui's people. He's not very funny, you. Silly pillar, don't speak recklessly, Yi Zhonghai scolded. Li Yi stopped mentioning the situation and said, come on, stop talking, let's go together. After drinking a glass of wine, the door rang. The three of them looked at each other, and He Yuzhu got up and opened the door, only to see Qinhuai standing outside with a stick. Upon seeing the two of them, He Yuzhu spoke up and asked, Hey, Qin, it's so late. What's up with you? Qinhuai looked at He Yuzhu and pursed her lips, saying, I heard that Li Yi has returned, and I must make a fuss to see the heroes in our courtyard. I can't help but grind him up. Upon hearing this, Li Yi immediately wanted to give Qinhuai a thumbs up and see their language art. But when Yi Zhonghai heard it, he pursed his lips. Your Jiazhang family saw the good news sent by the army, and his face seemed to have lost another son. Can he still say good things about Li Yi? But he won't expose it either, after all, then hurry inside. He Yuzhu heard Qinhuai say this and looked at her watery eyes. He smiled like a chrysanthemum and quickly called them in, as if Qinhuai was referring to him as the hero. Li Yi remained silent and calmly ate the dishes. As soon as the two of them entered the room, Kanji pointed to the table and said, Mom, it's meat. I want to eat meat. What to eat? Didn't you make a fuss about wanting to see a hero? Let's go back quickly after watching. After speaking, he looked pitifully at the three of them and said, the child hasn't eaten meat for too long. Hi, come on, sit down and eat together, He Yuzhu quickly shouted upon hearing it. As they were about to take their seats, Li Yi spoke out, wait a minute. As he spoke, he added 2 pieces of meat from the bowl and put them into an empty bowl. He continued, Sister Qin, I speak bluntly. Don't mind, I have something to discuss with Mr. E. It's not convenient for you to listen here. Picking up the bowl and walking over, he handed it to Qinhuai and continued, give these 2 pieces of meat to the child to taste. It's not good for the child to eat too much at night, as it can easily cause stomach problems. Qinhuai heard Li Yi say this and looked at He Yuzhu with grievances. He Yuzhu also tasted it this time, and Li Yi looked at the stick stem, which looked like Jia Dongshu and was a bit disliked. He Yuzhu looked at Qinhuai apologetically and said, Little Yi and an old man are indeed discussing something. After they finish discussing, I will send some to you. Upon hearing what He Yuzhu said, Qinhuai could only nod in disappointment and walk out with a bowl and a stick in hand. Just before leaving, I glanced at the dishes on the table. As soon as Qinhuai left, the atmosphere somewhat cooled down, and neither Yi Zhonghai nor He Yuzhu knew what to say. Li Yi didn't take it seriously and arranged for He Yuzhu to sit down and talk about He Yuzhu's search for a partner. Just as the atmosphere was about to rise, a few people suddenly heard someone starting to curse outside. Hello Li Yi, and also He Yuzhu, you 2 bad and purulent bastards, just give my grandson 2 pieces of meat to beat the beggar. End of this chapter. Chapter 4. Liu Hai Zhong, who are you? You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4 Liu Hai Zhong, who are you? Qinhuai returned home holding a bowl. As soon as she opened the door, Jia Zhang got out of bed and muttered, Why did you come back so soon? Has my great-grandson eaten enough? After speaking, there were only 2 pieces of meat in the Qinhuai bowl. Picking up a piece and eating it, Bangji saw it and quickly said, Grandma, I want to eat it too. Jia Zhang looked at Qinhuai in shock and asked, "What's going on? Aren't you taking my grandson to eat meat?" "Don't mention it, Li Yi gave us 2 pieces of meat when he saw the stick stem, saying that he had something to discuss with an old man and wouldn't be able to keep us for dinner," Qinhuai sighed and said. "Can't we just give you 2, right? Where's stupid Zhu? Isn't he quite generous with you?" The meat was brought over by Li Yi, what can silly Zhu say? Qinhuai was annoyed by her mother-in-law and had just been humiliated at silly Zhu's house. When she returned, her mother-in-law kept questioning her. "He's Li Yi, he's such a fallen star. He beat up my family's Dongshu and ran away. I haven't even accounted for him yet. Now my grandson wants to eat some meat, so I'll give him 2 pieces. No, I have to go find them," he said, pulling a stick and walking outside. Qinhuai saw it and wanted to stop it, but was pushed away by Jia Zhang, pointing at Qinhuai and cursing, "You useless thing, you can't even get some meat. Get away." After speaking, he pulled the stick and walked out. As soon as he left, he cursed at the Heyuan family across from him. After the 3 people in the room heard it, Zhonghai slammed the table and scolded, "This Jia Zhangshi is too indecent. There's no one who curses without food." He stood up and wanted to go out. Li Yi grabbed Zhonghai and said with a smile, "What can you say to her? If you want to scold her, go ahead and not lose a single strand of hair. Come on, brother Zhu, give it to an old man and let's continue drinking." After hearing this, Heyuan muttered, "No, I'm not angry with her." She put on her clothes and went out. Upon seeing this, Li Yi glanced at Zhonghai, who couldn't sit still, and said, "Grandpa, it seems that this wine won't work. Let's go take a look too." Zhonghai nodded and the 2 of them walked out together. As soon as he left, Li Yi saw many people standing in the courtyard, all of whom heard Jia Zhang cursing and running out to watch the excitement. And Heyuan was arguing with Jia Zhang, while Qinhuai stood aside wiping away her tears. Zhonghai looked at the noisy 2 and frowned before scolding, "Sister-in-law, don't make a fuss." Jia Zhang turned her head and saw Zhonghai and Li Yi coming out. She was so angry that she didn't fight at all and said fiercely, "Zhonghai, mind your own business. I tell you, I must eat this meat today." Glancing at Li Yi as he spoke, he said, "Before Li Yi joined the army, he hit my Dongshu like that. If it weren't for him, my Dongshu wouldn't have made a mistake and died. He must give me an explanation today." Li Yi almost laughed angrily as he listened. Before he could speak, Zhonghai said, "Don't talk nonsense. Dongshu didn't even know who hit him that time, so you suspected it was Li Yi. Besides, it took Li Yi more than half a year to go into the army before Dongshu happened. How can you blame him? Who could have done such a thing except for him, a bad and purulent bastard?" He lay on the ground and wailed, "Dongshu, look at how my mother has been bullied by them. Come back quickly and take them away." As soon as Jia Zhang spoke, Zhonghai said, "It's broken. This kid is not the one who can suffer losses." Turning his head, he saw that Li Yi had lost his smiling face and looked expressionlessly at Jia and Zhang. Without a word, Li Yi turned his head and entered the room. He picked up 2 plates of meat and sat down on the doorstep, looking at Jia Zhang. He said, "Jia Zhang, I'm telling you today that you're cursing me, and I'll pull out your teeth one by one. If you don't believe me, give it a try." Li Yi's words were extremely plain, but everyone in the courtyard remained silent. Even Jia Zhang was stunned by Li Yi's cold gaze and tone. Li Yi looked around the crowd and walked up to Bang Gung with 2 plates of vegetables. He crouched down and picked up a piece of fat and thin meat, shaking it in front of Bang Gung, "Do you want to eat?" After finishing speaking, he stuffed it into his mouth, and the corners of his mouth were still dripping with oil. Bang Ji watched as he smelled the aroma of meat, swallowed his saliva, and nodded forcefully. "I want to have your mother buy it for you." Speaking, he stood up and patted his stomach, looking at Jia Zhang and continuing, Everyone knows how your family used to treat our family. Now that you want to take advantage of me, there's no way out. Also, you were just promoting feudal superstition, right? I will definitely go to the street office tomorrow to report this situation. When Jia Zhang heard Li Ye's words, she could not speak out in horror. Although she was an old woman with a big character, she also knew what was waiting for her when she was put on the hat. The lightest thing was to be sent back to her hometown. Trembling, he stood up and couldn't even speak clearly. No, I'm not. At this moment, Liu Hai Zhong walked out with his stomach bulging and looked at Li Yi. He cleared his throat and said, "What's going on in this courtyard? Why is it so noisy? Xiaoye, how can you talk to your elders like this, your parents?" Before Liu Hai Zhong could finish speaking, Li Yi turned his head and looked at him with a slanted gaze. Do you have no eyes or a mouth? What's going on? You don't know how to ask. You don't know how to look. Also, who are you calling Xiaoye, you old man? Liu Hai Zhong never expected Li Yi to dare to speak to him like this, and he was momentarily stunned. Just now, he actually came long ago and probably knows what's going on. After watching for a while, I saw Yi Zhonghai standing there without saying a word. After some thought, it was now a good time to show that his second uncle could handle things, so I was ready to use Yi Zhonghai's usual tone to resolve the conflict. And he didn't deal with Li Yi either. A few years ago, when Li Yi was involved in some speculative business, he reported it to the street office and wanted the leaders of the street office to educate him well. I didn't expect this kid not only didn't understand his good intentions, but also smashed his own glass every night before he left the army, and he always called himself to wake up and pee when he had nothing to do. A voice in the middle of the night, second, big, get up, go to the bathroom. I almost scared him out of his work, and now whenever I think about it, my teeth itch with anger. I didn't expect to be scolded by Li Yi as soon as I spoke today. Even the most prickly He Yuzhu dare not scold him for being immortal on weekdays. Thinking of this, Liu Hai Zhong suddenly became furious. Pointing at Li Yi, ready to speak. Unexpectedly, Li Yi didn't give him a chance at all. He placed 2 leftover dishes on the ground and reached out to shake off the finger pointing towards him in the bangs. What's in your bangs? What's in her Jia Zhang family? Just the 2 of you still want to be my elders. Damn it, my face is so big. I won't even bring you incense if I die. As soon as Li Yi finished speaking, he heard 2 curses from behind. Bastard, dare you curse my dad? Little brat, I'll kill you. After the 2 finished speaking, they rushed towards Li Yi. Li Yi didn't even look, but turned around and kicked someone down with a whip. He reached out and grabbed the second person's neck, lifting them straight up and throwing them aside. Li Yi clapped his hands and saw that it was Lu Guangtian and Lu Guangfu, the 2 brothers of the Lu family, who were both beaten by Li Yi and lying on the ground shouting pain. Especially Lu Guangtian, who was kicked by Li Yi and knelt on the ground, unable to stand up while covering his stomach. Li Yi saw joy and said, "Hey, why did you kneel down for me? This is to say New Year's greetings to me. Now it's New China, and we don't like this." He ran to the side. Listening to Li Ye's cold joke, no one in the courtyard responded. Watching Li Yi clean up the 2 brothers Lu Guangtian in the blink of an eye, even Liu Hai Zhong was so scared that he stayed in place and swallowed his words. And Jia Zhang was even more unbearable, trembling as he pulled his stick and prepared to go home. Li Yi saw but no one spoke, and he lost interest in tidying up a few people. After patting his stomach, he picked up 2 leftover dishes and said to He Yuzhu and an old man, "Brother Zhu, an old man, I'll go back to sleep first." The 2 of them hadn't recovered from the thrilling scene just now, they just nodded in a daze. Just as he took a few steps, Li Yi suddenly stopped and said to his neighbors in the courtyard, "You can see that. It was the 2 brothers of the Lu family who took the initiative, and I was forced to counterattack." After speaking, he left without looking back, leaving everyone looking at each other. End of this chapter. Chapter 5. Calculation. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5. Calculation at night, at Li Ye's house. Li Yi lay tossing and turning on the Kong, unable to sleep. He had a bit of a habit of recognizing the bed, and although the house was tidy, he always felt that there were some shortcomings. Not popular, unable to sleep soundly. Unable to sleep, Li Yi entered the system space and began to inventory the materials he currently had. 500 boxes of canned beef, 500 boxes of canned pork, and 500 boxes of canned fruit each. Each country's individual soldier has 5,000 rations. 100 boxes of various foreign military alcoholic beverages and cigarettes each. 20 sets of toolbox. 200 sets of ECWCS winter clothing. 200 sets of sleeping bags. More than 100 miscellaneous items including engineering shovels, telescopes, gas masks, first aid kits, generators, and more. 3 German BMW R75 motorcycles, 2 Hummer H1 motorcycles, 1 Mercedes-Benz truck, 1 assault boat, and 2 tons of gasoline. This is what Li Xinjiu has obtained in the past 5 years by signing in. Apart from occasionally being able to take out canned food and rations, he dares not move anything else. Even now, some things are still invisible. In addition, there are some special rewards. For example, what Li Yi currently masters. Advanced combat, advanced firearms proficiency, proficiency in English, Japanese, and Russian languages, proficiency in basic driving, and proficiency in battlefield doctor skills. There are also advanced genetic improvement drugs that were originally gifted by the binding system. This potion can be said to be Li Ye's greatest reliance on making a living in the army. After use, it can greatly increase the lifespan of users, improve their various body genes, physical functions, appearance, height, and more. The most powerful thing is that it can significantly reduce the aging rate of users, with a ratio of 10.1. It was through this potion that Li Yi rose to fame and became a king of war. Please finish counting the items gifted by the system, and Li Yi starts counting his current belongings. 1,500 yuan in cash, around 50 tickets of various kinds, 3 large items of tickets given to oneself by the leader, and a Shanghai brand watch. I have collected a set of special 62 stamps for Beijing Opera facial mask and a set of yellow-purple-blue military posts. Next, Li Yi plans to arrange his work and decorate his own house. As for what plans there are for the future, Li Yi can only say to take one step at a time and see one step at a time. With a high-quality background, one cannot rely on quality. As long as one perseveres until the wind stops, it is not a problem. You can also take advantage of this time to collect some rare treasures and set up a few yards. Anyway, I'm getting old slowly, wait slowly. When the wind stops, take off directly from the original position. The only problem is that I may change my identity every once in a while. After all, I have never been too old or suspicious. As for when the system will return, Li Yi is not in a hurry. With system space, this function is already sufficient. Thinking about it, I dozed off. Early the next morning. Li Yi looked at the time and it was only 6:30. After waking up, getting dressed, washing up, and doing some simple physical activities, Li Yi opened the door. After opening the door, I found that the sun had not yet risen, but I could see a vast expanse of white in the yard. It's snowing now. Li Yi returned home and retrieved a portion of French soldier rations from the system space. Caviar, compressed bread, coffee, jam, chocolate, oats, and a dish of spaghetti like shrimp and chicken noodles. It has to be said that among the individual rations of various countries, the best ones to eat are undoubtedly France and Italy. The most outrageous is the kimchi country, with kimchi numbers 1 to 6 and a few chocolate beans. Li Yi only ate them once and swore never to open a portion again in his lifetime. Li Yi was on vacation last time and wanted to dispose of those things. He opened a copy to feed the dog, but the dog shook its head when it smelled it. After eating the food, throw the packing bags into the stove, roll up the sleeves, take the shovel broom and start to sweep the snow. At this moment, the sky is just beginning to brighten. Li Yi cleaned up his own house and Liu Xiao's doorstep. After tidying up everything, Li Yi looked at Liu Hai Zhong's house, which was still dark and gloomy. He returned to the house and splashed the water he had just washed onto Liu Hai Zhong's doorstep. "Old Wang, it's your blessing to have me as your neighbor. Your good days are yet to come." Let out a sneer. "Go home and put on your coat, put on your cotton hat, straighten yourself for a while, and then put on your shiny big toe leather shoes." After leaving the gate, I followed my memory and turned left and right to a very remote alley, where I found a small courtyard. Li Yi looked around and knocked on the door. In no time, a young man opened the courtyard door, looked up and down at Li Yi, and asked, "What's up?" "I'll exchange something." The young man poked his head out and looked around without anyone, warning, "What are you talking nonsense about? Why are you here to exchange things for the black market?" "I am Zhang Laosan's younger brother, my own person." "Which Zhang Laosan?" "I don't know him, hurry up, hurry up." The young man frowned and urged Li Yi. "Zhang Laosan from Baihua Hutong, I'll just change something and leave after finishing." Li Yi took out a cigarette and handed it to the young man. The young man considered for a moment and asked in a low voice, "What should I change for?" 20 eggs, do you have an old hen? If so, give me one. 7 parts of an egg, the old hen doesn't have it. Cheng. When do you need it? Can it be done now? You'll be at the entrance of the alley in half an hour, and someone will give you it, the young man said and closed the door. Li Yi saw the young man closing the door, just like walking towards the entrance of an alley. This is a wholesaler that Li Yi used to know in the 1960s. There was a shortage of supplies, and both eggs and other meats not only required tickets, but also a fixed quantity. So it has given rise to various wholesalers and black markets. Let's not discuss where these wholesalers come from. Just say that the official is also turning a blind eye to this kind of thing. As long as no one reports it, everything is fine, and someone reports it. When Li Yi first crossed over, he followed Zhang Laosan to grab things from various wholesalers and sell them to earn some hard-earned money. Today, Li Yi also came to try his luck, but to his surprise, it was still open here. After wandering around the alley for about half an hour and smoking 2 cigarettes, Li Yi saw an old lady swaying over with a basket. The old lady walked over and asked Li Yi, "You just want something, right?" Li Yi nodded and handed her the prepared money. The old lady took the money and carefully counted it twice before handing the basket inside to Li Yi. Upon opening it, it turned out to be empty inside. I couldn't help but look at the old lady with confusion. The old lady looked around and only then smiled and said to Li Yi, "Come with me." Following the old lady to the entrance of a courtyard, I saw an old man carrying a basket in his hand. The old man handed the basket to Li Yi when he saw the old lady. Li Yi looked down and saw 20 eggs lying inside. Bring the basket from Li Yi's hand. The old lady waved her hand and went back with the old man. How about humans and mice? Look at how cautious they are. Tunnel. Professional. Slowly carrying things, Li Yi walked towards Director Wang's house and knocked on the door, but there was no one there. He had no choice but to go and do something else first. End of this chapter. Chapter 6. Planning in Tavern. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6. Planning in Tavern. Get off the alley and board the tram in BJ City, watching the army of bicycles outside the window. Li Yi also thought to himself that he should buy a bicycle today, otherwise it would be too inconvenient to go out. After the tram swayed and arrived at the department store, Li Yi entered the mall and bought a Phoenix bike. He added a license plate and installed an additional bicycle light. He also bought a few Zhonghua and Maotai bikes and placed them in the space without anyone noticing. Stepping onto a brand new bicycle, one leisurely shuttles through the streets of 49 cities. I strolled around Tiananmen Square and went to places such as Hohai and Panjiayuan. I experienced the style of the 4 or 9 cities in the 1960s. I wandered until after 5 p.m. and rode to Tiananmen Street. I searched all the way and found the entrance of a courtyard house. Looking at the old man walking outside the courtyard, Li Yi opened his mouth and asked, "Grandpa, could you please ask if Zhang Xiaohu is at home?" The old man looked at Li Yi and said, "On the left side of the backyard is their house. You can go in and take a look yourself." After bidding farewell to the master, Li Yi walked to the backyard. As soon as he entered the moonlit door, he saw a young graduate wearing a sweater and pounding coal. Li Yi picked up the bicycle rack and smiled, saying, "Hey, young man, the firepower is quite strong." The person looked up and saw that the person coming was Li Yi. He was surprised and said, "Oh, Captain, why did you come?" After tossing the broom, he walked over in 3 steps and 2 steps, grabbed Li Yi's arm and said, "Let's go, hurry into the house." Li Yi entered the room and was pulled by Zhang Xiaohu to sit on a chair, busy making tea and pouring water for him. While busy, he said, "Captain, are you coming back to visit your family?" Li Yi shook his head and said, "I changed jobs. I just came back yesterday and came to see you today." Transfer. Upon hearing Li Yi's words, Zhang Xiaohu was taken aback. In his impression, his company commander Li Yi was a born soldier. Why did he suddenly switch jobs? "Don't worry about this matter for now. I'm here today to talk to you about something." "What's going on?" Seeing that Li Yi didn't want to talk much, Zhang Xiaohu didn't ask much. He sat down with a teacup in his hand and asked casually. "I have a younger brother in my hometown village who is 5 years old this year. I want to apply for a household registration for him." This is Li Yi's plan. Taking advantage of the imperfection of the current registered residence system, Li Yi is ready to leave a way out for himself. In case someone doubts that he will not be old in the future, Li Yi will take out a new identity. After hearing Li Yi's words, Zhang Xiaohu said casually, "Hi, what a big deal. I'll come back and ask my second uncle to handle it for you." Zhang Xiaohu's uncle is a cadre of the 49th City Police Station. Zhang Xiaohu's parents passed away early on, and he was raised by his second uncle from a young age. His work was also arranged by his second uncle, and his uncle and nephew were the same as father and son. Upon hearing Zhang Xiaohu's full agreement, Li Yi took out a Chinese note from his coat and placed 50 yuan on the table. Zhang Xiaohu saw this and quickly said, "Captain, what do you mean? Put it away quickly. If you hadn't carried me to the hospital on your back at the border, I could still sit here and talk to you now." Li Yi didn't believe his rhetoric at all. Zhang Xiaohu's performance in the army was actually average, cheating and playing tricks, and placing too much emphasis on interests. It's just that he's not bad and clever enough to handle things, so Li Yi didn't cut off contact with him. It is precisely because he is such a person that Li Yi dares to come to him to do such a thing. Li Yi shook his head and said, "This thing is not for you, it's for your second uncle. There's no empty-handed way to ask someone to handle things. Don't worry about this matter, come find me when you have a message." Zhang Xiaohu didn't say much when he heard Li Yi say that. The two chatted for a while about military matters, and Li Yi explained the name of Zhang Xiaohu's new identity and where his household registration was. Zhang Xiaohu was clamoring to shout for Li Yi to eat. Li Yi spoke up and said, "Just skip the meal. Let's have a drink and chat." Upon hearing this, Zhang Xiaohu patted his thigh and said, "I know a place where the wine tastes good. His side dishes are also good, let's go there." Li Yi nodded without hesitation, and the two of them put on their clothes and pushed their bicycles together before leaving. Not far away, the two of them arrived at the entrance of a tavern called the Qianmen Shao Tavern. After following Zhang Xiaohu in, Li Yi found that the tavern was not very large in area, but there were quite a few people. 7 or 8 tables were filled with people, and there was someone standing next to them squatting and drinking. Zhang Xiaohu had sharp eyes and saw a table of guests about to leave. He quickly went over to occupy his place and waved to Li Yi. After seeing Li Yi sit down, Zhang Xiaohu stood up again and said, "Captain, wait for me. I'll go get some wine and side dishes." Li Yi nodded indifferently and followed Zhang Xiaohu's direction to look at the counter. Inside the counter, he saw a beautiful, 25-year-old landlady standing. Li Yi suddenly felt a bit strange. The owner of this tavern was actually a woman. I couldn't help but take 2 more glances. I saw that the female shopkeeper was 20.4 or 5 years old, with a beautiful appearance and a full figure. She was also a dignified and elegant beauty. On the other side, the female shopkeeper Su Huizhen looked at the young acquaintance in front of her and said with a clever smile, "Brother Zhang, it's been a long time since we last met. What have you been busy with lately?" "Hi, needless to say, I've been extremely busy with work lately. Today, coincidentally, the platoon leader in my unit returned from his job and I just came to have a drink." Upon hearing Zhang Xiaohu's words, Su Huizhen was immediately taken aback. As soon as the young man who had just come with Zhang Xiaohu entered the door, Su Huizhen noticed it. After all, the other person is not only good-looking, but also tall. After coming in and taking off their coat, even wearing thick clothes can feel their strength. The most important thing is that at first glance, I feel that Li Yi gives her a very special feeling. It's difficult to encounter such people in the 4 or 9 cities, at least Su Huizhen hasn't encountered them. That person is your platoon leader in the army. So young. He doesn't look as big as you, whose young master is he? In Su Huizhen's mind, being able to become a company commander in the army at such a young age would require a senior cadre at home. Can I still lie to you? He's already 22 years old this year, and his family is just an ordinary family, but he's a legendary figure in our army. I can tell you about him for a day. After praising Li Yi, Zhang Xiaohu continued, "I'll talk to you in detail another day. Bring me a plate of peanuts, a plate of pork belly, and a plate of cold dishes. Don't forget to put your kimchi in. Give me 2 pounds of 3.50 cents worth of wine." Listen to Zhang Xiaohu reporting what he wants in one breath. Su Huizhen first felt a hint of curiosity, wanting Zhang to continue saying something, but also felt that it was not the right time now. I had to joke and say, "Hey, Brother Zhang is bleeding a lot today. Can you 2 of you drink 2 pounds? Unexpectedly, Zhang Xiaohu pouted and said, "I don't know if it's enough yet." As he spoke, he was about to pay, and as soon as he touched his pocket, he saw a 5 yuan bill placed on the table. Zhang Xiaohu turned his head and saw Li Yi standing behind him. Suddenly, he said urgently, "Captain, you." Although he is usually stingy, when it comes to inviting Li Yi to drink, Zhang Xiaohu is still very willing. Firstly, Li Yi is indeed kind to him, and secondly, Zhang Xiaohu has a slight admiration for Li Yi. Zhang Xiaohu felt a bit disappointed by Li Yi's rush to make payment. Li Yi ignored him and said to the Qiao shopkeeper, "Boss, I'll leave the money with you for now. 2 pounds is not enough. I'll refund more and make up for less later. Could you please bring me the wine later?" After speaking, he dragged Zhang Xiaohu away from the counter. Su Huizhen put away the money, and in her ear, she could still hear the young man and Zhang Xiaohu saying, "Don't rush to pay me here, come over and drink with me." End of this chapter. Chapter 7. The Woman Who Wants to Share a Table with Me. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7. The Woman Who Wants to Share a Table with Me. Li Yi's wine taste before traveling was actually not very good. He likes to talk nonsense when he drinks too much. So in this era, Li Yi was initially afraid to let go of drinking, afraid of saying things he shouldn't have said. But since the strengthening of genes, it has been discovered that no matter how much one drinks, they will not lose their sanity and may feel drunk, but they will not completely drink too much, causing the brain to be unable to keep up with the tongue. He simply let go of drinking, claiming to be invincible in the army, which was also one of the reasons why his leader appreciated him when he was promoted. At this moment, Li Yi was half a Jin of Baijiu. He felt hot and took off his coat. Who would think that he was wearing only a white shirt inside? As soon as he took off his coat, the fitted shirt revealed his sturdy upper body. Wiping the sweat off his forehead, Li Yi was about to pour wine for Zhang Xiaohu, who was clearly a bit drunk, when he suddenly smelled a fragrant breeze, reminiscent of the late summer breeze. Li Yi turned his head and saw a woman dressed in a red cotton skirt sitting gracefully on a nearby stool. Li Yi looked at the uninvited woman with a hazy gaze, and the first thing he saw was fiery red lips, followed by a pair of smiling eyes. Women are very beautiful, charming to the bone, and also very white, which is the delicate white like jade that Li Yi likes the most. After a brief moment of unconsciousness, Li Yi was about to ask when she heard the woman's coquettish voice say, "Little brother, make a table together and I'll treat you to a drink." Li Yi nodded noncommittally and shook his head again, "Just sit down and treat me to a drink, there's no need." The woman was stunned for a moment and didn't say anything. She poured herself a glass of wine and looked straight at Li Yi as she drank it. However, Zhang Xiaohu, who was clearly drunk on the side, saw the woman and muttered, "Boss Shueru, our platoon leader is a tough guy. We don't like the money of you little women." Upon hearing Zhang Xiaohu praising him so much, Li Yi couldn't help but feel a little embarrassed. He could still look up to it. "Oh, Zhang Xiaoga, who is this tough guy? Can you introduce me to him?" The woman didn't get angry when she heard this, but smiled and added another glass of wine to herself. After hearing the woman's words, Zhang Xiaohu instantly stood up like he had beaten chicken blood and walked behind Li Yi, shouting, "Everyone, listen to me." The noisy small tavern suddenly quieted down, and all the drinkers stopped to look over. "This." Zhang Xiaohu pointed to Li Yi and continued. "He was my company commander when I was in the army. He won the first place in 2 military competitions in our military region. In ancient times, he was the brave general of the 3 armies. At the border, our company." Zhang Xiaohu was about to tell these people about Li Ye's glorious deeds when he slowly stood up and said to Zhang Xiaohu, "Xiaohu, can you still drink?" "Yes, Captain. We're not ashamed of this matter. It's okay to talk to everyone about it. Do you want to hear it? Speak up. I want to hear." Suddenly, the tavern exclaimed loudly, wanting Zhang Xiaohu to continue talking. Li Yi stood up, tiger-faced, and pressed Zhang Xiaohu down to sit on the stool. "Xiaohu, stop talking and be careful not to cause trouble." Upon hearing Li Ye's words, Zhang Xiaohu also woke up and turned his eyes, saying loudly, "If you want to hear me, I won't talk anymore." Ignoring the teasing of the tavern crowd, Zhang Xiaohu smiled and poured wine for Li Yi, saying, "Captain, you see, I can't be straight after drinking some wine." Li Yi smiled and said, "Your uncle didn't make you be honest, did he? You shouldn't have said anything, forget it." "Hi, didn't you drink a bit and leave your mouth open?" Zhang Xiaohu said as he toasted Li Yi. The woman sitting on the side kept holding her glass and listening to Zhang Xiaohu and Li Yi talking, her eyes bright as she looked at Li Yi. Li Yi couldn't bear the look in his eyes and turned to look at the woman, asking, "Is there anything on my face?" The woman smiled and reached out her hand, saying softly, "My name is Qinhuai. I like heroes the most. Can I get to know you?" Li Yi looked into those seductive eyes, didn't shake hands, just nodded lightly. "My name is Li Yi." After speaking, Li Yi stopped talking to Qinhuai and continued drinking with Zhang Xiaohu, chatting about the recent situation of some other comrades in arms. Another half-kilogram of baijiu was left. Li Yi rolled up his sleeves, picked up the wine jar and was about to pour Zhang Xiaohu wine. I found that Zhang Xiaohu had already fallen asleep on the table. Li Yi was stunned for a moment, then shook his head and chuckled. I poured myself a bowl of wine and closed my eyes to listen to the chat of the surrounding drinkers. Family background is short, national affairs, boasting and gossiping, and the atmosphere of the market is full. He really likes this atmosphere. Li Yi has always felt lonely, not sentimental, but lacking a sense of belonging in this era. He always has a string in his heart, especially in collective life. He is even more cautious and afraid of any mistakes. Now that I am away from collective life, my heart has become much more relaxed. Comfortably, he picked up a wine bowl and drank it. Just as he was about to pour another bowl, he found that Qinhuai had picked up the wine jar. Li Yi turned her head and Qinhuai said with a smile, "If you don't want me to treat you to a drink, then you can treat me to a drink, right?" As she spoke, she filled her small wine jug and added wine to Li Yi. Holding up a small wine glass, he motioned to Li Yi. Under the bright light, the woman's long, slender fingers, painted with bright red nail polish, held the sapphire wine glass. It seems to have pinched his heart. Li Yi remained calm and picked up his wine glass to touch the woman. "Why don't you look at me?" After seeing the man in front of her clinking a cup with her, Qinhuai lowered her head and silently ate peanuts, unable to help but ask. "You are too dangerous as a woman." Li Yi picked up a chopstick from his stomach and tried to suppress the drunkenness, as well as the rising heat in his heart. Upon hearing Li Yi's words, Qinhuai playfully blinked. "Are you afraid?" "A little bit." Li Yi nodded truthfully and let out a sigh of relief, saying, "The more beautiful a woman is, the more dangerous she is, and you are the most dangerous one." After speaking, Li Yi shook the remaining wine from the wine jar and drank it all in one gulp. The feeling this woman gave her was too strong, and Li Yi felt a bit overwhelmed. Thinking of this, Li Yi spoke up and said, "I had a great time drinking today. I'll leave first." Getting up, putting on his clothes and coat, Zhang Xiaohu stood up and drank before leaving the tavern. As soon as he left, Li Yi heard someone calling him from behind and turned his head to see the pretty shopkeeper. "Little brother, you haven't paid yet." Su Huizhen stopped Li Yi and stood at the entrance of the tavern, saying. Li Yi waved his hand, "Let's leave it for now, we'll come back later." After speaking, he put Zhang Xiaohu in the back seat of the bicycle, took out his key from his pocket, and pushed the bicycle away. When Su Huizhen returned to the tavern, she saw Qinhuai, a good sisters who loved and killed her, staring blankly at the door. "Hey, everyone has left, why are you still looking?" Su Huizhen walked up to Qinhuai and waved her hand before her, teasing her. "What do you know? You didn't notice that this man gives people a special feeling. Especially special." Su Huizhen said before Qinhuai. Qinhuai nodded. He had been in a bad mood recently due to his divorce from his ex-husband and wanted to come to the tavern for a drink. "I didn't expect to be attracted by the tall and handsome Li Yi as soon as I entered the door. She, Qinhuai, has not never seen a man before, but Li Yi has an indescribable and inexplicable temperament, which is very attractive to her. I just came to Li Yi's table to compete and want to get to know and make friends." Afterwards, I learned from Zhang Xiaohu that he was a platoon leader at a young age. As Zhang Xiaohu pointed out, Li Yi was still particularly powerful in the army, so I had no other thoughts. Now it's not just a newly liberated military officer in his early 20s. She just couldn't bear the heat rising in her heart and wanted to chat more with Li Yi. Thinking of this, Qinhuai sighed and said. "Unfortunately, he's just a military cadre at such a young age. The threshold for his family must be high, otherwise I would have to take him down." Qinhuai knows her situation, even though she has a reputation for divorce, she cannot be favored by high-threshold families. What a pity. I heard from Brother Zhang that his family is just an ordinary family and there's nothing special about it. And he has also changed jobs now. Upon hearing Su Huizhen's words, Qinhuai stood up and hurriedly walked out. "Hey, why are you going? You haven't paid yet. I'll talk about it later. Let's go one by one." Su Huizhen sighed helplessly and tidied up the table. End of this chapter. Chapter 8. I want to fall in love with you. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8. I want to fall in love with you. After taking Zhang Xiaohu home, Li Yi lit a cigarette and watched as snowflakes drifted down the sky, walking all the way towards the small tavern. Just left the tavern, Zhang Xiaohu woke up halfway. Still asking Li Yi in a low voice, "Is that woman named Qinhuai pretty?" Then he told Li Yi about the woman. She was the successor of a century-old silk shop in 49 cities. As soon as she took over the silk shop, she accepted a public-private partnership and changed her business to become a silk company. I am 25 years old this year, and I am a famous wealthy woman from Qianmen. Unfortunately, my fate is not good. I divorced my husband less than 2 years after getting married, and now I am alone with a son. After listening, Li Yi nodded clearly. In fact, Li Yi had some feelings for Qinhuai, but he was afraid that she might not be from the right place, so he didn't continue to contact her. I didn't expect it to be a divorced wealthy woman. I wandered aimlessly until I reached the entrance of the alley. Li Yi saw a thin little man squatting on the snow, picking up corn flour scattered on the ground by someone he didn't know. In the middle of winter, this man was wearing a tattered cotton jacket, his face turned pale with cold. Li Yi had good eyesight and could see at a glance that the frostbite on his hand was starting to pus. Li Yi felt a bit impatient when he saw it. I walked over and let out a shout. He took out 2 yuan from his clothes and handed it to the man, saying, "Sir, it's so late for dinner yet. We have a chance today. How about I treat you to a meal?" The person looked up at Li Yi without saying a word, reached out to take the money, and tilted his head to look at Li Yi. Li Yi stood up and was about to leave when the man shouted, "Hey, wait a minute." Li Yi turned around and saw the thin little man walking over, glancing up and down at him. "I didn't bring anything today. If you have time, come to Yanji Hutong to find me. My name is Ruan Ho, and I'll give you a fortune." Li Yi was overjoyed upon hearing this and joked, "What kind of wealth and status is it? Don't inquire." The man waved his hand and was about to leave unsteadily. Li Yi didn't pay much attention and extinguished the cigarette, carrying it in his coat pocket and walking away. On the other side. On the snowy Qianmen street, Qinhuai stood in place searching for the figure. But I couldn't find it, and I couldn't help feeling a bit disappointed. Just as I was about to return to the tavern, I suddenly saw Li Yi giving money to a homeless man at the entrance of an alley not far away. I was originally planning to go over, but after just 2 steps, my eyes turned and an idea came to mind. Quietly walking to a corner, I found a cleaner-looking place and sat down on the ground. I was looking forward to when Li Yi would come over when I suddenly heard someone calling her from behind. "Boss Shueru, what's wrong with you? You twisted yourself. Come on, I'll help you up." Turning his head, he saw a thin and small man. After hearing the man's words, Qinhuai rolled her eyes and whispered, "You don't need to worry, hurry up and leave." Seeing the man still standing in place with a puzzled expression, Qinhuai kicked him in anger and said, "Let's go, don't delay my good deed." Turning her head, she saw that Li Yi was about to leave the alley. Qinhuai saw that the man was still waiting and grabbed the snowflake, throwing it over. The man dodged sideways. He was also a regular customer of the tavern, and knowing the temper of Qinhuai, he rolled his eyes in anger and left. As soon as he took 2 steps, the man heard Qinhuai's coquettish cry of, "Oh!" I couldn't help but look back. I saw Qinhuai supporting her feet, looking pitifully at a tall young man. The man pouted and said to himself, "This little girl's skin belongs to the dog face, right?" Li Yi looked silently at Qinhuai sitting on the ground, and after only a short separation, they met again. Li Yi sighed and asked, "What's wrong with you?" "I was just going home and accidentally twisted my foot," Qinhuai said softly, then looked up at Li Yi. Li Yi looked around and found that there were no pedestrians. He bent down to help Qinhuai up. As soon as she stood up, Chen Shuiru leaned against Li Ye's arm. Chen Shuiru was only about 1.6 meters tall and could only stand in front of Li Yi, who was 1.87 meters tall, on his chest. As soon as I lowered my head, I smelled the faint fragrance under Chen Shuiru's hair. Suddenly, there was a sense of unease and confusion. It's not Li Ye's fault, as they all say that he served in the army for 3 years, and the mother pig competed with the mink cicada. Li Yi stayed there for a whole 6 years. And still facing such a top-notch beauty. After Chen Shuiru stood firm, her face was scorching hot, but she didn't actually know what she was going to do. Just as my head was hot, I ran out and now I have no idea what to do next. Just when Chen Shuiru was lost in thought. Li Yi saw that Chen Shuiru was silent and thought she was too painful to walk. He asked in a low voice, "Where is your home? I'll take you back." "Thank you, it's not far ahead." Chen Shuiru heard Li Ye's words and looked up at his handsome face. A horizontal heart. "It's all here, anyway, we can't let the man that this old lady likes run away." Thinking of this, Chen Shuiru's eyes rolled and she said coquettishly, "I don't seem to be able to leave. Can you carry me back?" After hearing this, Li Yi didn't take it seriously. He nodded and carried Chen Shuiru on his back. Following Chen Shuiru's instructions, he walked all the way to the entrance of a Shuiru's silk shop. Li Yi looked at the door and found it quite large. I couldn't help but ponder that with such a large silk shop still open, it was obvious that this woman was not an ordinary person. Just as Li Yi stopped to let Chen Shuiru down, a slender and tender finger appeared in front of him holding a key. Chen Shuiru's voice came from behind. "Can you take me inside?" Li Yi immediately frowned, unable to understand what medicine this woman was selling in her gourd. This is not 2020, but in the conservative 1960s, when alone men and women are together, a lack of attention is a big problem. But Chen Shuiru saw that Li Yi was not moving, so she hung the key on her little finger and caressed Li Yi's side face with her index finger. "What? Are you really scared?" Li Yi turned his head to look at the charming woman in front of him, and the heat poured down by the cold weather rose again in his heart. Reaching out to take the key from the woman's hand, she carried Chen Shuiru on her back and walked in. Upon entering the door and turning on the lights, one could see the colorful silk on the shelves, as well as the exquisite and elegant interior. Carrying Chen Shuiru on his back, Li Yi saw that there was still a set of sofas. "Look at the style, it's from Big Brother's side." Put Chen Shuiru on the sofa, and Li Yi looked around. Looking at the porcelain and antiques on the antique shelf, he had some idea of the value of this woman. This is a trouble that cannot be easily caused. Thinking of this, Li Yi was about to bid farewell when he saw Chen Shuiru standing up casually. "I'll be fine if I see your feet," he said as he took off his shoes and stepped on the wooden floor with both feet. Chen Shuiru walked around Li Yi and said, "I want to date you. Do you think it's okay?" After hearing Chen Shuiru's words, Li Ye's mind suddenly froze. He never expected this woman to say these words. And Chen Shuiru looked at Li Ye's silly appearance and slowly walked to the gramophone, playing an Old Brothers, 3 Cars, continuing to sit on the sofa, his arms resting on the coffee table. He bent down and placed his head in his palms, staring straight at Li Yi. "Why?" After a moment, Li Yi frowned and looked at Chen Shuiru. "There's no reason why." "There's no reason why women like a man." Chen Shuiru sat up and curled her hair in front of her forehead. "Do you know me? How do you know if I'm married? No woman would let her man wear a single piece of clothing and go out in the middle of winter, and I don't think you do." Li Yi sat on the other side of the sofa, took out a cigarette from his pocket, and just as he was about to light it, he saw that Chen Shuiru had already handed over a match. Seeing that the cigarette in Li Ye's mouth had already been lit, Chen Shuiru blew a breath and extinguished the match, asking, "Am I beautiful?" Li Yi nodded. Chen Shuiru smiled and asked, "Did I guess correctly?" Li Yi nodded slowly again. End of this chapter. Chapter 9. Strange Development. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9. Strange Development. Qinhuai looked at Li Yi, who was smoking a cigarette silently. The more I look, the more I feel like I didn't make a mistake today. The man in front of me is really beautiful. Especially as she approached, feeling the strong masculine aura on him made her feel dizzy and dizzy. Qinhuai is so impulsive today to date a man she just met. One reason is that she recently discovered that her best friend, Su Huijian, the owner of a small tavern, had a romantic relationship with a woman. This made Qinhuai a little dissatisfied. She had a man just after her divorce, thinking that she couldn't lose to her in the matter of finding a man. Secondly, she had a good impression of Li Yi when she met him today. From the initial impulse to pursue him, she has now developed an idea. So he didn't hide or pinch it, and openly brought it up. She Qinhuai likes someone and wants to tell them openly. Looking at Li Yi, who was silent, Qinhuai couldn't help but secretly feel angry. I, such a beautiful woman, want to date you, but you still hesitate here. After finishing smoking, Li Yi looked at the charming Qinhuai and extinguished the cigarette butt, saying, then I've agreed with you first that dating is okay, but getting married may not be possible. If you think it's okay, let's give it a try. Li Yi also figured it out. He's a kid who doesn't have much to ask for. Are you afraid that this rich woman has any intentions towards him? And he really has feelings for Qinhuai. It's hard to meet such a charming beauty in this era. Qinhuai blinked and nodded when she heard Li Yi's words. I don't believe I can't take you if a beautiful woman like me is by your side. Li Yi saw Qinhuai respond and got up to sit next to her. He grabbed her hand and played with it in his own hand. Li Yi had this impulse just now in the tavern, and now he has finally fulfilled his wish. Qinhuai lowered her head and said a gentle dislike. Li Yi played for a moment, then turned his head to look at Qinhuai's seductive red lips, pursed his lips, and then kissed her. Qinhuai was a bit confused by Li Yi's sudden kiss. He didn't expect Li Yi, who had just looked embarrassed, to be so bold. But when the strange feeling on my body began to overcome reason, I didn't think about it anymore. Until he realized that his shirt had disappeared, he exclaimed in surprise, no, it's too fast. With a push, Li Yi stood up. And when Li Yi saw Qinhuai's shy expression, he felt that it was Qinhuai who couldn't wipe her face away. Why are you so shy after all the children have been born? Thinking of this, Li Yi, who had already turned his head, pulled Qinhuai, who was preparing to dress, to his side. Ignoring Qinhuai's exclamation, he stopped and picked her up, walking to the back room. In an hour, this is your first time. Li Yi looked at Qinhuai, who was holding the blanket with tears in her eyes, speechless. Looking at the plum blossom dots on the bed, he asked in disbelief. Qinhuai nodded slowly. Li Yi couldn't help but complain that Zhang Xiaohu was too unreliable. I heard you divorced and have a son, didn't you? After a moment of silence, Li Yi hugged Qinhuai in his arms and asked aloud. At this moment, Qinhuai is also in a complex mood. Originally, she only wanted to find someone who could handle it and anger Su Huijian, but she didn't expect to lose herself so quickly. She now has words of suffering. Her former husband liked men and married her just to cover up this matter. After getting married, she never touched her at all, and even her children were his younger brothers. My ex-husband's younger brother died outside due to an accident, and his sister-in-law ran away after giving birth to a child, so he happened to be adopted by my ex-husband. I have been arguing with my ex-husband since I found out I was cheated after getting married. In the end, he couldn't bear it and wanted to divorce her. He gave her both the property and business, and the only condition was to raise his younger brother and children. Qinhuai also agreed, but she didn't like the child very much, so she sent it to her mother's house to help take care of it. She didn't originally intend to hand herself over so quickly. But things are developing too quickly, and she still doesn't know what to do. But the matter has come to this point, so we have to take a closer look. Thinking of this, Qinhuai watched as Li Yi wiped the corners of her eyes and slowly explained the cause and effect of the matter. After Li Yi finished listening, he was 2 heads tall, so why did he encounter this nonsense? Li Yi sighed helplessly as she looked at Qinhuai, who was now drizzling with pear blossoms. After thinking for a moment, he said, "Everything has happened. What do you want to do?" After speaking, Li Yi felt a bit regretful, as he felt like a scumbag when he heard these words. As expected, Qinhuai immediately sat up upon hearing this and looked angrily at Li Yi, asking, "What do you want me to do? You big man slept with me and asked me what to do." Li Yi knew he had said the wrong thing but did not explain. Getting out of bed, he took out a cigarette from his pants on the ground, lit one, and slowly said, "Don't get excited yet, listen to me." Li Yi took a puff of his cigarette and said, "I'll give you 2 choices now. The first one is that we'll stick to our previous agreement and try dating first. If we get along well, we'll get married. Don't worry, I'm definitely aiming to get along with you." After a pause, Qinhuai, who was listening attentively to him, continued, "The second one, you can just report to the police and arrest me." After speaking, he looked straight at Qinhuai. After hearing Li Ye's words, Qinhuai pondered for a moment and her face changed, as if the person who had just become angry was not her. "How could I be willing to call the police? I just want to see if you really want to have sex with me," she said softly as he spoke. He was about to stand up, realizing that he was still naked, and quickly got into the blanket. Li Yi felt relieved when he heard Qinhuai's words. He was really afraid that Qinhuai would report to the police and arrest him just like the people in TV dramas he had watched before. Then he laughed self-deprecatingly. He extinguished his cigarette and sat on the bedside, pouring a glass of water and handing it to Qinhuai, saying, "I have something to do tonight, so I'll leave first." "It's so late, what's up with you?" Qinhuai sat up and said discontentedly when she heard Li Ye's words. "I have a friend who is coming to my house tonight to discuss something with me." In fact, Li Yi was trying to find an excuse to go back. As soon as he returned, the people in the courtyard found out that he didn't stay at night and couldn't figure out what to arrange. He has not yet settled the dust in his work, so he cannot afford the waves. Li Yi pretended to take out his coat while speaking, but in fact, he took out his own food book and proof of employment from the system space. Qinhuai hugged the blanket and was about to say, "What if you lie to me and don't come back?" Li Yi took out those 2 things and placed them on the bed, saying, "This is my certificate of transfer, and I also have a grain book. I'll leave it with you for now, and I'll come to see you tomorrow." Upon hearing this, Qinhuai picked up those 2 things and flipped through them. First, I looked at Li Ye's transfer certificate and saw the bottom 3 chapters, which made me realize that this certificate was not fake. Then, I flipped through the grain notebook and found that there was no record of receiving it. Only then did I believe that Li Yi was really not deceiving me. After all, these 2 things are related to his work and his food. Qinhuai looked at Li Yi and said softly, "You don't have to be like this. They still believe you." As she said, the thing was carefully placed under her pillow. After putting it away, she turned around and saw Li Yi looking at her with a smile on her face. Qinhuai smiled as if pleasing her and continued, "I'm afraid you might lose it when you go back at night. Let me put it away for you." Qinhuai's inconsistent behavior not only doesn't annoy people, but also gives off a cute feeling. Rubbing Qinhuai's head, she sat on the bed with her back ready to get dressed. Unexpectedly, when he bent down to pick up his clothes, he felt a slight itch on his back. Looking back, she saw Qinhuai lying under the blanket, lifting one foot and gently stroking on his back. As Li Yi looked over, he asked with a seductive expression, "Is it urgent?" Li Yi still doesn't understand what it means. Throwing away the clothes, he lay back on the bed. End of this chapter. Chapter 10. This is quite outrageous. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10. This is quite outrageous. Coming out of Qinhuai's store, Li Yi looked at his watch and found that it was almost 10:30. I sighed and felt that today's situation was too bizarre. Find someone to handle the matter, have a drink, bring out a girlfriend, and no one believes her even when she says it. Lazily stretched out his waist and walked quickly towards the small tavern. Arriving at the entrance of the tavern, I found that the lights inside had already gone out halfway, while a man stood outside the shop. The man is in his early 30s, with a sturdy figure and wearing a dusty cotton jacket. He is now standing under the eaves of the tavern, taking shelter from the snow and occasionally looking around. Li Yi walked over and recognized the man at a glance. Since taking the genetic potion, his memory has always been very good. As long as someone he has met meets him face to face, he can remember where he has seen it. The man is the one who just squatted and drank in the tavern. As soon as the man saw him, he arched his hand and said, "Sir, this is the change for you." He then handed him the money from his pocket. After seeing Li Yi take it over, he continued, "Your bicycle is in the store. I saw it snowing and you haven't come back yet, so I put it inside for you." After hearing this, Li Yi took out a cigarette from his pocket and handed it to the man, saying solemnly, "Thank you." After lighting a cigarette for the man, he continued, "I'm really sorry, something happened just now that caused you to wait so long." The man looked at Li Yi in surprise upon hearing his words, shook his head when he saw his sincere gaze, and said, "If you come to our tavern to drink, I will take responsibility." After hearing this, Li Yi patted the man's shoulder and said, "Don't just talk about you one by one. I'm not as big as you yet, and it sounds awkward. Just call me Li Yi. What about you? Your surname?" "My name is Kai Chuanwu. You can call me Lao Kai." "Okay, Lao Kai, I have something else to do today. I'll treat you to a drink at the store tomorrow night." With these words, Li Yi walked into the store and pushed his bicycle out, waving at Kai Chuanwu who had blocked the door curtain for him. Kai Chuanwu returned home and saw Su Huizhen sleeping with her child in her arms. Shaking the snowflakes on his body, he hung his cotton jacket behind the door, poured a basin of water into the stove, and placed it under the bed. Rubbing her hands, she took the child from Su Huizhen's hand and whispered, "Give it to me, go wash your feet." Su Huizhen gave the child to Kai Chuanwu, sat on the bed, rubbed her waist, and asked, "Has that person come back?" Kai Chuanwu nodded and remained silent. Su Huizhen took off her shoes and placed her feet in a basin, sighing, "I don't know if Qinhuai caught up with her." She was originally talking to herself, but Kai Chuanwu nodded and said, "We caught up." Su Huizhen was immediately surprised, knowing that her men never tell lies. The gossip asked, "How did you know? Did you see it?" "I smell the scent of Qinhuai on him," Kai Chuanwu added after speaking, "There is a mark on his neck, the same color as Qinhuai's lipstick." Su Huizhen glanced at Kai Chuanwu and joked, "Hey, you observe Qinhuai quite carefully. You even know what kind of fragrance and lipstick she has. I wander around in the tavern every day. No one in the tavern uses perfume except her." Upon hearing Kai Chuanwu's words, Su Huizhen nodded and patted her knees, sighing, "So according to what you said, the marks are all on her neck. Qinhuai should have succeeded, and I don't know how that person is." Kai Chuanwu breathed a sigh and placed the sleeping child on the rocking bed. Standing up and looking at his goddess, he slowly said, "The dragon moves like a tiger, and his aura is like a mountain. Qinhuai cannot control him." Thinking of Li Ye's recent actions, he continued, "Fan Jinyu and Liao Yucheng are not worthy of lifting his shoes." Upon hearing the high evaluation of Li Yi by her own man, Su Huizhen couldn't help but glance sideways at Kai Chuanwu. Kai Chuanwu didn't know if she didn't believe it, so he said, "He will come to the tavern tomorrow. Just talk to him and you'll know." On the other side, Qinhuai bid farewell to Li Yi, tossing and turning, unable to sleep. He simply lay on the bedside, watching Li Ye's transfer certificate and food bin smirk foolishly. She never imagined that she could meet such a good man. Not only does he look handsome, but he also has many styles. There are also many styles. Thinking of this, Qinhuai immediately became alert. His ID was only 22 years old, and he had been in the military for 6 years. How could there be so many tricks? Although Qinhuai is a young child, she has never seen or heard of anything from all walks of life. Upon reflection, it became clear that something was wrong with this matter. Does he have any other women? Otherwise, 16 would be. Thinking of this, Qinhuai forced herself to stop thinking. This matter cannot be pondered, every thought is a matter. It seems that I need to come up with some tricks. I can't miss out on such a high-quality man. As long as he enters the palm of Qinhuai's hand, even the most difficult-to-serve master will be obedient and obedient. Li Yi didn't know that someone was calculating him now, riding his bicycle and braving the cold wind to rush back. 20 minutes later, Li Yi returned to the yard and had just parked his bike when he heard the door of Liu Hai Zhong's house open. I saw Liu Hai Zhong limping out with gauze wrapped around his head, and Li Yi started cursing without saying a word. "You bastard, who asked you to splash water at my doorstep?" He looked at Li Yi angrily and hurriedly, with a determined expression. This morning, Liu Hai Zhong was in great spirits and ready to go to work. Unexpectedly, as soon as he left, he stumbled heavily. Looking on the ground, my goodness, there is such a big lump of ice freezing at the entrance of my house. Not to mention standing on it, wearing cotton gloves makes it feel slippery to the touch. He doesn't have to think about it, but he knows that only Li Yi can do this in his bangs. I went to the health clinic to see a doctor, and the more I came back, the angrier I became. I wanted to confront Li Yi and ask my eldest son to go to the factory to find Yi Zhonghai. At night, there will be a whole hospital meeting to criticize Li Yi. Where is Yi Zhonghai doing? He immediately sent his eldest son back, and when Lu Guangtian returned, he repeated Yi Zhonghai's original words to Liu Hai Zhong. How do you know it was Li Yi splashing water on your house? Did you see it or what? Upon hearing Yi Zhonghai's words, Liu Hai angrily patted the table, only to scratch the wound and grin in pain. I wanted to trouble Li Yi, but when I thought about his strength, it made me feel a bit hesitant. Finally, looking at Lu Guangtian, who was staring at the peanuts on his table, he gave him a big mouth and asked him to go to the factory to call his disciples home at night. Just give it a beating to relieve qi. Unexpectedly, the wait lasted for 3 hours. Those people had families, and no one could afford to follow Liu Hai Zhong. There was no other way, but Liu Hai Zhong took out a few packs of cigarettes and sent everyone away. Who would have thought that Li Yi had just left when he returned? How could you spit blood out? Who saw me splashing water at your doorstep? Who else besides you did such a wicked thing? You're not right. You've been looking for trouble all day at your age, so you might have offended someone. Fuck your mother, you. Liu Hai Zhong's liver was sore when he was scolded by Li Yi's 2 words, and he couldn't help but burst into profanity. Li Yi didn't get used to him. He moved his wrist and squeezed his fingers with a thud, looking at the bangs with an unpleasant expression. Liu Hai Zhong looked at Li Yi's appearance and choked back in the latter half of his sentence. Be careful with me. Putting down a harsh sentence, he angrily returned to the room. End of this chapter.